Today we're looking at adding and subtracting decimals, and in particular negative decimal numbers. Now the rules for adding and subtracting negatives are the same for decimals as they are for integers. And we can summarize 3 rules. So the first rule says to add 2 numbers with the same sign, add them together and keep the sign. Okay, so you either got 2 positive numbers or 2 negative numbers. In those cases, add the 2 numbers together and keep the sign, whatever that is, positive or negative, which both numbers have. So let's just see an example of that now. Example A here is going to demonstrate our first law. So we've got negative 3.64 plus negative 2.9. So our rule says add 2 numbers with the same sign, so we just add these together and we're going to keep the sign, which is a negative. Okay, so very simple. We just make sure that our numbers are lined up neatly. Negative 3.64 plus negative 2.9. Now, because this is a decimal number, we want to fill in any zeros that we need to, so that they have an equal number of numbers after the decimal point. Okay, and we just add those together. 4, 15. Remember to put in our decimal point, carry the 1, and add these together is 6. And we keep the sign, so we're going to keep that sign, which is a negative. Okay, so we've got negative 6.54. Let's have a look at the second rule now, which says to add 2 numbers with different signs, find the difference between the sign numbers, then use the sign of the number further from 0. Now that's a bit of a mouthful. Let's just look at the first part. So to add 2 numbers with different signs, so you've got like negative 5 and positive 3, something like that. We take 2 numbers, different signs. We find the difference between the sign numbers. Okay, so finding the difference, of course, means subtraction. But just for this first part of the rule, we ignore the signs. So let's have a look at an example, and then we'll look at this next part of the rule. So we've got our example, negative 5.7 plus, and it's going to be a positive. We don't put in the positive sign, positive 2.4. Okay, so we've got 2 numbers with different signs. So what this rule is saying, to add 2 numbers with different signs, find the difference between the sign numbers. Okay, so we ignore the negative and ignore the positive to start with, and we just find the difference between the 2 numbers. So we'll do that. Quite easy. 5.7 take 2.4. Okay. Make sure our decimal points are lined up again. 3.3. Okay. Now we've done the first part of the rule, to add 2 numbers with different signs. Find the difference between the sign numbers. Okay, so we ignored the signs here. When we were finding the difference, we ignored the signs. But then the second half of the rule says, then use the sign of the number further from 0. Okay, so we look at the numbers further from 0. Okay, and again, you can sort of ignore the sign. You can pretend that this negative is actually a positive, if that helps you. But we're looking at which number has the greatest magnitude, is the technical term. So let's just look at it. 5.7, okay, and we've got 2.4. Now 5.7, positive or negative, is further away from 0 than 2.4, positive or negative. Okay, so our number, the number which is the furthest from 0, is 5.7. So we're going to keep the sign of 5.7, which is negative, and that's what we use for our answer there. Now let's look at the third rule. To subtract a number, add the opposite. Now this one may look a bit weird when I'm doing it. It's quite simple though. It may just look a bit funny. So just watch carefully. Okay, so to subtract a number, add the opposite. So we've got negative 5.307. Okay, and we're going to add the opposite, so 0.62. So we're subtracting 0.62, which is actually a positive. So what we're doing, in effect, is we're adding a negative number. Okay, so when you subtract a number, it's the same as adding a negative. Okay, so this is 0.62. Make sure our digits are lined up and fill in any zeros. Okay, so we're adding these two numbers together because subtracting is the same as adding a negative, according to our rule here. Okay, so add these together. So 7, 2, 9, and 5. So we're left with negative 5.927.